Have you ever felt it, Sagittarius? That strange flutter in your chest when the world is quiet, but something inside you stirs? Maybe you've been waking up with a sense of anticipation you can't explain. Or perhaps someone from your past keeps crossing your mind, not with pain, but with a gentle ache that says, I'm still here. If that's you, you're not imagining things. Something big is coming, and not just for anyone, for you. Because if you're a Sagittarius or someone drawn to the bold, intuitive, soul-seeking spirit of Sagittarius energy, then you were made for moments like this. Welcome to Zodiac Wisdom. I'm Sophia, psychologist, astrologer, and your companion on this journey. This space is for you. The woman who has held space for so many others, and now finally hears a quiet whisper saying, it's your time now. In today's message, I'll share something sacred, a reminder that you are being protected, that someone, perhaps someone you thought had long forgotten you, still carries you in their heart. And most of all, that what's coming isn't just fate. It's a divine confirmation that your journey, your healing, your love, it's all been seen. So don't click away. Don't push this feeling aside. Stay with me until the very end, because this message may unlock something you've been waiting to hear for years. It may change how you see yourself, your past, and what's still possible ahead. And if at any moment something resonates, if a line, a thought, or a name touches your heart, please leave a comment below. I read them all, because your voice might be the exact healing someone else is waiting to find. And if this space feels like home, I'd be so grateful if you'd like this video, subscribe, and share it with a fellow Sagittarius soul. Because here we're not just surviving, we're returning to truth, to light, to ourselves. Now take a breath. You're safe here. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Sagittarius and the sense you can't explain. When the soul knows before the mind. Sagittarius, you've always been the traveler. Of roads, yes, but more than that, of truths. You chase meaning with your whole heart. And yet, what if the next truth you need to find isn't out there? What if it's already rising from inside you? Lately, you might have felt something shift without knowing why. Maybe it's a sudden pull to slow down, even when your nature tells you to keep going. Maybe it's a dream that repeats, a name that keeps surfacing, a feeling that someone who once mattered still does. These moments don't come randomly. Not for you. You're ruled by Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, expansion, and divine timing. So when you start to feel like something big is coming, you're not being dramatic. You're being activated. You're being called. You just haven't put it into words yet. I've worked with so many Sagittarians over the years, women who've rebuilt themselves more times than they can count. Women like Maya, a 49-year-old yoga instructor who came to me because she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change. She wasn't scared, just unsure. It's like my soul is whispering something's coming, she said. A few months later, a letter arrived from a person she hadn't spoken to in 20 years. Not a romantic reconciliation, but a spiritual one. Closure. A circle completed. And in that moment, everything made sense. You see, Sagittarius, your soul often knows before you do. That's because you don't just live in the physical world. You dance between realms. You pick up on undercurrents others miss. A glance. A silence. A certain time of day when your body tightens for no reason. You don't need proof. You need permission to trust what you already know. That restlessness you've felt lately? That's not anxiety, it's spiritual anticipation. That sadness that comes and goes like a wave? It's not random, it's the emotional echo of something deeper preparing to close, so something bigger can begin. And that strange peace you've started to feel, even in uncertainty, that's your confirmation. You're already standing at the threshold. The universe doesn't speak to Sagittarius through fear. It speaks through signs, through timing, through a quiet sense of rightness in the middle of what looks like chaos. So if you've been feeling more emotional, more aware, or more drawn to old memories lately, it's not nostalgia. It's preparation. You're being invited to remember someone who once loved you, not necessarily to bring them back, but to remind you that you were loved. You're being invited to reflect on everything you've given, your strength, your loyalty, your ability to keep going even when no one saw you breaking. And most of all, you're being invited to stop running for a moment and ask, what is life trying to show me right now? Maybe it's that you're safe now. Maybe it's that you don't have to do it all on your own anymore. Maybe it's simply this. You're allowed to rest while the universe rearranges things on your behalf. So listen closely, Sagittarius. You are not overreacting. You are not being too emotional. You are not being too much. You're awakening. You're remembering. And what you're remembering is not a fantasy. It's the truth of who you are and who you're becoming. This isn't just a new chapter. It's a new way of living. And in the next chapter, we'll go deeper. We'll talk about the person who may have left, but still carries you. And why that bond, even unspoken, may be part of what's guiding your next steps. Are you ready? Let's keep going. Chapter 2. The one who left, but never really let go. When the connection still lives in your soul. Sagittarius, you've always known how to move forward. You're the one who packs up pain and transforms it into purpose. The one who turns endings into new beginnings. But every once in a while, even for someone as forward-focused as you, there's a connection that doesn't fully release its grip, a presence that no longer walks beside you, yet somehow still exists inside you. Maybe it ended years ago. Maybe the person simply faded away without warning or explanation, or maybe life quietly pulled you both in different directions. Whatever the reason, the truth is this. Some people don't leave footprints, they leave soul prints. And when that happens, the usual rules of forgetting don't apply. You may not speak their name. You may not even think of them often. But then something happens, a certain song plays on the radio. You catch a scent you haven't smelled in years. Or you wake up from a dream with their face still imprinted in your mind. And suddenly, your whole being reacts. Not in longing, not in sadness necessarily, but in recognition. And while the world might call it nostalgia or label it unfinished business, deep down, you know it's more than that. It's energetic memory. And Sagittarius, your fire sign soul, ruled by expansive Jupiter, doesn't just remember things, you feel them across time and space, long after others have moved on. I've seen this so often in those like you who love deeply, even when they don't mean to. Clarissa, a Sagittarius woman I once worked with, hadn't seen her first love in over 10 years. She was successful, independent, fulfilled by most accounts, and yet she began having dreams of him, dreams without dialogue, just images, just energy. She didn't want to reconnect, didn't even miss the relationship itself, but she couldn't deny the emotional echo it left behind. One morning, she lit a candle, sat with the memory, and allowed herself to cry, not for him, but for the version of herself that never had the chance to be acknowledged during that chapter of her life. And in doing so, something within her softened. It wasn't about closure, she said to me. It was about reclaiming the part of me that he once reflected back to me. Sagittarius, this is what makes you so unique. You don't just love with intensity, you love with soul. And when someone touches that part of you, they don't just pass through. They settle somewhere deep, leaving a vibration that you carry in silence. But here's the thing. Just as you feel them, it's very likely that they still feel you too. Not consciously perhaps, not in words or clear moments, but in quiet pauses, when their chest tightens for no reason, or they catch themselves smiling at a memory they didn't even know they still had. The connection may no longer be alive in the physical world, but energetically it continues. Because you, Sagittarius, don't just leave an impression, you leave a frequency. One that lingers. One that teaches. One that heals long after you've walked away. So if there's someone who left your life but never really left your thoughts, it's okay. You don't have to push it away or turn it into a lesson. You're not weak for feeling, and you're certainly not going backward. You're simply acknowledging what's true. Some hearts speak to each other beyond time, beyond presence, beyond logic. And your heart, in its expansive, intuitive brilliance, still knows how to listen. But here's the real power. You don't need them anymore. You don't need answers, apologies, or reconnection. You've outgrown that version of need. What you have now is awareness, maturity, the understanding that just because someone shaped you doesn't mean they have to stay. And just because you still feel their energy doesn't mean your story is unfinished. Just means it mattered. And you, being who you are, have learned to carry what mattered with grace, without letting it weigh you down. You're not waiting anymore. You're not hoping for a return. You're choosing to continue walking forward, with all the memories, all the feelings, all the wisdom. Because you've realized the real reunion isn't with them. It's with yourself. And that is where we go next. In the chapter to come, we'll explore what it means to stand fully in that space. To choose yourself not as a reaction to loss, but as an act of truth. Because Sagittarius, you were never meant to chase love. You were born to be love. Let's keep going. Chapter 3. The Sacred Choice. When loving yourself becomes the turning point. Sagittarius, you've spent a lifetime offering the best of yourself to others. The laughter that fills the room. The spark that ignites ideas. The steady optimism that keeps people going when they're ready to fall apart. And yet, beneath all that vibrant fire, there have been moments when you've questioned your worth, not because you lacked it, but because so often it felt like the world only loved you for what you gave, not for who you are when you're quiet, still, and in need. Maybe no one ever said it directly, but somewhere along the way, you learned to measure your value through how useful, how inspiring, how reliable you could be for others. But today, something inside you is shifting. Not loudly, but steadily. Because you're beginning to understand that the love you've poured out so freely needs to find its way back to you. This isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming sacred. You are no longer willing to trade your peace for validation, your fire for someone else's comfort, your truth for acceptance. And as painful as it might feel, that realization is a form of awakening. It's the moment you look at yourself, not through the eyes of someone you're trying to please, but through the lens of your own soul, and you whisper, "I'm enough." Not because I've earned it, just because I exist. I remember a Sagittarius client named Meera, who spent years giving everything to a partner who never saw her. She wasn't looking for praise or grand gestures. All she wanted was to be met, emotionally, energetically, spiritually. But he stayed surface level, unavailable, always promising more but delivering less. One day, after yet another silent dinner, Meera didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply excused herself, went for a walk, and sat beneath the stars, the place she always felt most like herself. And in that moment, surrounded by silence and sky, she realized, I don't need him to see me. I see me. And I deserve to feel this peace every day, not just in stolen moments. That night, she didn't just leave the relationship. She came home to herself. Sagittarius, this is your turning point too. Not because someone failed you, but because you finally stopped failing yourself. You are not meant to burn out so others can stay warm. You are not here to prove your light. You are here to live it. You've spent years being strong for others. Now it's time to be strong for yourself. That means drawing boundaries where your energy leaks. It means saying no without guilt. It means choosing rest over productivity, softness over performance, truth over approval. And maybe as you start to choose yourself, old voices rise up. Ones that say you're too much, too distant, too free. But here's the truth they never told you. Your wildness is not a flaw, it's freedom. Your independence is not loneliness, it's power. Your intensity is not overwhelming, it's divine. When you stop shrinking, the right people will stop leaving. When you live your truth, the world around you shifts. And suddenly, those who stay are not there to fix you or use you, but to walk with you side by side as equals. So take this moment not to fight for your worth, but to feel it. Not to chase love, but to be love, radiating inward before outward. When you place your hand on your heart today, don't ask what you need to do to earn rest or joy or peace. Instead say, I already deserve it. I already am it. Because that, Sagittarius, is the most radical act of love. Choosing yourself again and again, not as a fallback, but as a foundation. And in the next chapter, we'll explore the gentle, powerful rebirth that follows. Not through a grand event, but through the smallest choice, to live from that place of self-love, fully, freely, and finally for you. Let's go there together. Chapter 4. The Quiet Rising, where wholeness begins without noise. There comes a time, Sagittarius, when you no longer seek proof that you've healed. You stop looking for applause, for someone to say, you've made it, because you feel it. Not as a loud celebration, but as a quiet clarity that settles into your chest like sunlight spilling slowly through a window. This chapter in your journey is not about a transformation everyone can see. It's about the invisible strength that builds inside you when you stop performing and start inhabiting your life. The kind of power that comes not from fixing the past, but from no longer letting it run the show. There's a stillness to it, a soft return. And that stillness, that subtle shift, is where your rebirth begins. You don't have to burn bridges or reinvent yourself overnight. You don't need to leave your job, change your city, or cut ties with everyone who hurt you. Sometimes the most profound healing starts with a single decision. to be gentle with yourself when no one is watching, to listen when your body says rest, to honor your intuition even when it contradicts logic, to breathe deeply and say, I trust me now. Because Sagittarius, for so long you've looked outward for guidance. You've followed the stars, the road signs, the whispers of possibility. But now the compass has turned inward, and the path ahead is not marked by grand adventures, but by the sacred simplicity of being present in your own skin. I once met a Sagittarius woman named Claire. She had traveled the world, built a life filled with movement and momentum. But one day, she told me she didn't recognize herself in any of it. Not because she didn't love her journey, but because somewhere along the way she had forgotten what it felt like to belong to herself. So she did something radical. She slowed down. She planted herbs in her window. She read books not for knowledge but for comfort. She started saying no more often, not to punish others but to say yes to herself. And in that softness, she began to feel something she hadn't in years: home. Not in a place. In her own heart. Sagittarius, you are not lost because you've slowed down. You are not falling behind because your path looks different now. You're returning. And in that return you are remembering what wholeness actually feels like: easeful, rooted, unhurried. There is a sacred kind of freedom that comes not from chasing what's next, but from savoring what is. And you, who have always been the seeker, are now becoming the one who simply is, not to be discovered but to be lived. So if this season of your life feels quieter than before, if you're not as productive or loud or visible, that's okay. That's not regression. That's realignment. That's your fire learning to glow steady instead of burning out. That's your truth learning to whisper instead of shout. And the beauty of it is that even in this stillness, you're becoming magnetic. Not because you're trying to be, but because real presence always is. You don't need a dramatic comeback. You don't need to prove anything anymore. All you need to do is continue showing up with your whole self. Imperfect, soft, honest, and let life meet you there. Because it will. Because it already is. Because the quiet rising you're experiencing now is not a pause before the next big thing. It is the big thing. And it's happening exactly as it should. In the light of this calm, something sacred unfolds. Not the start of a new life, but the continuation of a truer one. Sagittarius, this is your homecoming. Not to a place or person, but to the deepest part of yourself. And when you stand fully in that light, even the world begins to shift around you. Let it. You're ready. And now, Sagittarius, here you are, still standing, still breathing, still burning with the kind of quiet fire that doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. You've just walked through the tender, unspoken corridors of your own soul, and maybe for the first time in a long time, you've done it not by running towards something new, but by staying present, still, and deeply honest. That, in itself, is a revolution. You didn't need anyone to come save you. You didn't need a sign from the sky. Because somewhere along the way you realized you were the sign. The whisper, the compass, the flame. And maybe no one saw the moment you chose not to give up. Maybe no one clapped when you forgave, when you let go, when you chose rest instead of the chase. But I see you. And more importantly, you see you. That's the kind of knowing that doesn't fade. That's the kind of truth that roots itself in the bones and becomes the new foundation. So let me ask you, what part of your own journey are you beginning to love again? What truth have you been quietly living, even when no one was watching? Share it in the comments, not just for me, but for someone else who may need to read exactly what you've learned. Because here in this space, your voice matters. Your story matters. And you, exactly as you are right now, are enough. If this message found you at the right time, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a fellow Sagittarius soul, or someone who needs a little more light today. This is just one chapter of our journey together, and there's so much more waiting. In the next episodes, we'll explore what it means for Sagittarius to love again from a healed heart, to rebuild faith after loss, and to step boldly into purpose with joy, not pressure. Because you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from wisdom. And that, my dear Sagittarius, is a beautiful place to begin. Until next time, keep choosing yourself, not out of pride but out of truth. Keep showing up with softness, even when the world says be hard. And keep walking, step by steady step, because everything you're meant for is already finding its way to you. This isn't the end. It's your return. Welcome home.